Hey guys, welcome back to Liminal Period. It's your girl, Chun-Li Shoddy. In today's video, I have a clip from PBS that I want to share with you guys, and it discusses the identity of Native American and what does it mean to actually identify as being Native American. And I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but being Native American in America or in the West isn't just an identity, but it also has political or legal parameters around it, right? So in a way, I thought it would be an interesting conversation to present to you guys, because I know on my channel I have a lot of different topics and a lot of conversation that I'm interested in, and some of them just purely for entertainment, and some of them I can relate to, and that's why I want to present the conversation. I know the topic of identity politics has been a main focus in Western media the last couple of years, and it dictates everything. You know, who can say what word, who can engage in what conversation, who can be a part of what community, and in some cases, who can be eligible for what, you know, whether it is a scholarship or a position at an organization, or, you know, being selected as a Supreme Court justice. Identity politics has been placed at the forefront, whether you and I like it or not. So again, I just like to have these conversations to understand it, and also to highlight the similarities that we all have, okay? But anyways, I'm getting on a tangent. I really just wanted to share this conversation, and hopefully we can have some meaningful conversation in the comment section down below regarding identity in America, okay? So anyways, without further ado, let's get into today's video.
We want to tackle one of the trickiest questions in Indian country. What does it mean to identify as a Native American? This brings up Native Twitter, AKA the only reason I ever used that app. Back when everyone was fighting about who's a real Indian and who's a fake, I was like, okay, whatever. But then I saw Buffy Sainte-Marie being called a pretendian, as in a pretend Indian, or someone who claims to have a connection to a Native American community, but actually doesn't. But Buffy, the woman we featured in the first episode, the woman who sang this? I mean, she penned songs that spoke to the issues facing Indian country, while also advocating for various indigenous causes, which became a main part of her work. So, does advocating for indigenous culture make you Native? Or does it make you an ally? Or something else entirely? Well, buckle up, because we're about to find out. This is A People's History of Native America with me, Tyler Clare. How many times have you heard someone say, my great-grandmother was a Cherokee princess? Or, I took a DNA test, I'm Native too. Well, for Natives, we've heard it countless times. This idea of a unified Native American identity is a colonial invention. All this begs the question, what does it mean to be a member of an Indian tribe? Well, every tribe counts their members differently. Some use descendancy records, others use blood quantum. This information was collected as part of the American government's tribal rolls back in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Blood quantum specifically comes from the Dawes Act, where some tribes had their reservation land divided up by the federal government to give individual tribal members their own slice of land. This gave way for the government agents to divide our blood into quarters and determine who gets what land. That's why some tribal nations prefer to use descendancy, which grants citizenship to those who can trace their lineage through either the paternal or maternal side back to that tribe. But in the world of identity politics, citizenship isn't everything, because citizenship, like blood quantum, is again a colonial construct. Our historic systems of community and kinship did not revolve around a plastic tribal ID card, but through cultural and personal connections. Marriage, adoption, long-term residence, or even practicing traditional lifeways, such as learning the language, practicing the religion, or any tribal cultural values could grant acceptance into a tribe. While our old practices of community adoption still exist to a certain extent today, racialized citizenship standards for Native Americans persist. When legal identity, such as citizenship, uses biological traits instead of social levels of kinship, does biology alone determine what it means to be a Native American? No. Of course not. Now, take-home DNA tests have been exploding in popularity, and as a result, many Americans are now informed of Native American markers in their genes. So does that mean we can use DNA as we use blood quantum to determine who's Native American? No. Do not pull an Elizabeth Warren. Those genetic markers are not exclusive to Native Americans, and even if they were, they have no indication of which tribe you're related to, if any at all. DNA has no connection to any tribal culture or belonging. Blood quantum, despite being imperfect, implies a trackable lineage from generation to generation. For instance, Tribal governments and communities decide who's a member of the community through blood quantum. The people not belonging to that tribe have to respect that. After all, tribes are sovereign governments and use citizenship for more reasons than identity. Citizenship determines a person's access to tribal lands, healthcare, and education, and sometimes per capita payments. The payments equate to a dividend of the profit from tribal enterprises. The majority of per capita payments to tribal members is around $1,000 per year. Considering that 1 of 4 Native Americans live below the poverty line, tribes must be judicious about who is entitled to these rights. So while citizenship is important to access the economic and political identity of Native Americans, it is not the determining factor of who can identify as one. Okay, are you still with me? Because this is where it gets even more complicated.
Okay, and before it gets more complicated, just gonna summarize it. Essentially, based on the Dolls Act, which I believe came about because America, like when we were becoming a nation, like we decided that we are going to trade with the Native Americans and we are going to take care of them, provide them with the resources of healthcare, education, all the resources that he mentioned, of Native American citizenship having access to. We came up with the Dolls Act to make sure that the people that are on the reservation that are identifying as Native Americans are truly Native Americans. And the only way that we're able to do that is through blood quantum, right? So through direct DNA biological lineage to that tribe or to that community, okay? So, I mean, I understand it. I get it. You know what I mean? From both sides is what I'm trying to say, is because being Native American is not just about the DNA that you have, okay? If you are half Native American but was raised in the UK all of your life, do you have the same experiences? Are you as tied to the culture? Do you have the respect for the community as you would if you were actually there living amongst other Native Americans? But on the flip side, if you are someone that is white but was, or you know, any race for this fact, but Asian, and you were embraced and taken into a Native American tribe and you lived there all your life, are you any less Native American than someone that was in the UK? I don't know, right? And I say, again, I'm introducing this conversation because of the identity of politics that exists within America, okay? Because I've had videos on it before where I've shown you guys Creole or Cajun people of multiracial, multi-ethnic backgrounds, okay, that identify as being black. But does that just mean that anyone gets to be black in America? You know, like, I don't know. Anyways, putting the cart before the horse. So let's get back to this conversation.
On one hand, there are tribal citizens who are not connected to their community, language, or culture, yet have the political status of a tribal member. On the other, there are people who identify with a tribe because they were raised by tribal members, practicing language and culture, and even currently living on the reservation, but do not meet blood quantum requirements for enrollment. But let's bring in an actual Indigenous academic. Holly Mackey, an associate professor of educational leadership at North Dakota State University, to help us understand this complex situation. Professor, can you help us understand what identifying as a Native American actually means?
We have to really be intentional about what it means and then be clear in our conversations about it in terms of how are you identifying as Native American. But when we're talking about Indigenous identity, we're really talking about a very distinct set of cultural characteristics, of language characteristics, of community and connection characteristics that is not tied just to land. But we also don't want to essentialize. We don't want to just open up the gate and say like, well, if you feel Native, you're Native. I think that there's some due diligence that has to go into that where, you know, if you're questioning your identity, if you're questioning whether or not you belong to a community, you have to do that work.
So let's talk about why we see this boom of non-Native people claiming Native heritage. In 1998, Philip J. Deloria wrote a book titled Playing Indian. This book outlines how the phenomena of non-Natives portraying Natives, which goes back to, well, the birth of this nation. He uses the Boston Tea Party as a historical example of this impulse to impersonate Native Americans while participating in American politics. He argues that in the construction of the United States, we had European settlers trying to distance themselves from their roots as much as possible. So, a misrepresentation of our Native American identity is actually what informs early American identity. To Deloria, the act of playing Indian created a unique American culture, while portraying Native Americans as destined to be extinct. Perpetuating these myths are only a small segment of how playing Indian harms the lives of actual Indians. But from our treaty rights to our unique experience, we're finally receiving more opportunities for social mobility. However, we're finding that some of these opportunities are actually being occupied by non-natives who are claiming to be native. Not only does this rob a qualified Indigenous person from a job, but it robs everyone else from the work and voice of an authentic Indigenous person. In a lot of these cases, we see the pretendian lean into stereotypical depictions of Native Americans to support their claims. Tanning beds, name changing, and the consumption of Indigenous goods, attire, and even ceremonial gifts, all to give the perception of authenticity. All of these things actually backfire and just embolden colorism and racism. The legacy of the media has trained non-natives to believe that we're all tan with straight black hair and have names like Runs with Walk. But in reality, Native Americans can look like anyone. Professor Mackey, can you help us out here? I mean, how do we move forward?
People who are non-native, who are claiming to be native, particularly if they don't know, need the humility to step back and say, oh, you might be right. And I don't have that patience for the people who know. But when it comes to these unnecessary attacks or this volatility, I don't think that that's how our people were. And so trying to model for people that you can have the conversation without it turning into an argument, without it turning into unnecessary conflict is going to be important moving forward. But, you know, ultimately, people who are doing it intentionally, they don't care. Right? They're just hoping not to get caught. And so for those people, you know, I pray for them.
We thank you for your time and your thoughtful insights, Professor Mackey. So, where do we stand now? According to the US Census, from 2010 to 2020, the number of people who identify with having an Indigenous heritage went from 5.2 million in 2010 to 9.6 million in 2020, with most who are self-identifying living off the reservation. This 87% increase of some of the people suddenly identifying as Indigenous may be true. The reality is, at the same time of the surge of self-identifying Native American people, fertility rates among Native women from 2008 to 2016 have fallen by about 24%. Look, it's clear from the numbers alone that there's some pretending going on. Like Sacheen Littlefeather, real name Maria Louise Cruz, who used her platform to speak up about Indigenous representation in Hollywood. But according to her sisters, Littlefeather then fabricated parts of her life and identity around harmful stereotypes, such as growing up in poverty with prevalent alcohol abuse. But it's also important to remember the trickle-down effects of having pretendians writing real laws, teaching real classes, or becoming thought leaders on the many important issues across Indian country. So what about Buffy Sainte-Marie? I mean, yes, CBC reports her name is technically Beverly Santa-Maria, and sure, she was born in Boston to two white parents, but she did make a meaningful connection to the tribal nation. In 1964, she was officially adopted into the Piaput Nation in Canada. And even if it was under false pretenses, it's only up to the Piaput Nation if they want to change their mind. At the same time, we have to learn from this Buffy situation, because she did not have to do any of this. That's what's so frustrating. Anyone can be an ally of Native Americans, but not by occupying space and resources reserved specifically for us. Because when we enter a space, we bring all the things you've been learning about watching on this series. We have parents who survived boarding schools. We're connected with our land. We might know our language and customs, and if we don't, we know why we don't. We as natives know the last names in our community because it's so tight-knit. If we don't know you personally, we certainly know some of your family. People can call us white, brown, or black, or the infamous apple. White on the inside, red on the outside. And to those who antagonize us, often never know which tribe we're from, let alone how to pronounce it. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so I really do apologize for the lighting, guys. So I'm gonna try and make this outro quick, but I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. And now that we've learned a little bit more about Native Americans, I was hoping that he was gonna go into it, but I guess he didn't. But a lot of the resources that they were talking about that were agreed upon by the United States government to provide for the Native Americans that are on the reservation are things that are like education, healthcare, social welfare, the freedom to hunt and freedom to fish, I believe. Essentially, they would be a domestic dependent but separate sovereign nation. Okay, and this is why I say I understand the need for blood quantum, is because as you saw in his chart, the number of people that are identifying as Native Americans are increasing with, you know, the rise in 23andMe and Ancestry.com and all things of that nature. Okay, like the amount of people that are identifying as being Native American is increasing. And the issue with that is all of the things, all the resources that the American or that the United States government is responsible for requires money, requires funding, okay? And it's a long time back and forth issue with how the funding is distributed, okay? Is it where the United States is going to be providing the schools? Are we going to be putting up these infrastructure, and then it's going to be Native American people or Native American teachers that are educators? Like I think like there's like a lot that personally I don't know about, but I'm very interested in learning more and understanding what is that dynamic going to look like, and how do we prevent it where the United States American citizens of 2024 or the future is just going to be forever indebted to this Indian country. Like how is that going to be any different than having a monarchy here in America, similar to UK or the Brits where they have a royal family, that doesn't work, that I don't know what they actually do because there is a whole separate parliament. But that's another conversation for another day because, again, like I say, I don't know how all of this works. But anyways, again, I think this ties back into some of the conversations I've had in the past videos about what does it actually mean to be Black in America, how Black is Black enough. Is it just based on the experience? Is it based on your DNA? Because again, we have all of these divisive conversations about interracial dating or DEI, affirmative action, and reparations. It's like if we can't even pinpoint or define what that group is or what that community is, then is all of the conversation not just a distraction? I don't know. All of this is just very interesting and very fascinating to me. And there was actually another video that I wanted to share with you guys, but unfortunately that clip got copyrighted. So if I remember, I will include it in the comment section or in the description box down below, and you guys can check it out. But it was the video on The Cut, I believe, or Jubilee, or one of those type of white background channels. And it was Native American people trying to spot out or see who is a real Native American person, and it's just strictly based on phenotypes. And I just thought that was so interesting and so opposite of the message that was conveyed in this PBS special. But anyways, I'll include the link in the comment section down below. If you guys enjoyed the video and see the correlation, please do comment. I love having the conversations with you guys. But anyways, I've enjoyed today's conversation. I hope you guys did too. And I look forward to speaking with you guys next time. Bye.